Welcome back, everyone, to the BizBeat by SVA, where we focus on what business owners need to know about tax, strategy, and business planning. I'm Lee Schwartz, Director of Business Development and Sales here at SVA Certified Public Accountants, joined as always by Eric Trost, not just our tax principal, but also our firm's president. Eric, how's it going?
Excellently. We're just getting into what we like to call opportunity season. Some people call busy season or tax season. We like to call it opportunity season.
Eric, let's go back to the early days of you working in this industry. During this time of year, how many hours were you working on an average week?
It was a different time back then, and time was measured differently. So if you worked 80 hours a week, it just means something different today.
And you didn't pull all your hair out at the end of an 80-hour work week?
No, I drank heavily. Didn't pull my hair out though.
Okay, I could see that. So I tell this to people internally, I can do a 60, 70, maybe 80-hour work week. But the next week I'm done. I'm dead. I can't do it again. I don't know how you guys are able to do this for 3 months straight.
Yeah. And in all seriousness, there was a passion to do this. It was kind of like climbing the mountain. And it was just a different atmosphere back then. It was like, we get together and we're going to all accomplish this. And you just did as much as you could for as long as you could. It was a test of endurance. And you celebrated with certain milestones along the way with deadlines. That was our reasons for, I guess, our passions. It was our reasons for being driven. And it's not the same anymore. And I'm not saying it should be, by the way. I'm not trying to harken back to the days of old and, say it was better back then. We might have just not been that smart. It was something, though, that we all strove for. And I think people look at it differently. Like, that's not my reason for living is, I've got this other thing in work-life balance and everything else. And I admire that. I mean, what we had before, I really liked that and enjoyed it. But looking back on it, I can see why some folks now would say that's just not for me. And understandably so. There is more to life than that. But at the time, in our age group, that's what we did.
Yeah, it's interesting. I can't imagine going back to that either. And as you talk about how times have changed, that kind of dovetails nicely into what we're going to talk about here today, which is something we've talked about a little bit before, but we're going to have more of an open conversation around AI. So, Eric, we're going to have this kind of be a wide-ranging conversation, but I think a good place maybe for us to start is, we work with small, medium-sized business owners, Wisconsin, Colorado, really all around the country. And, what you hear about out in the marketplace on the, in the news is a lot of doom and gloom around AI and sort of the cutting edge of things. But that's not always how it's happening on more of a local, smaller business level. You talk just a little bit about how we're advising clients or kind of what you see small and medium-sized businesses doing right now as it relates to AI.
Yeah, I think where I start, Lee, is talk about what is out there, so to speak, on AI and where you get your information from. You always want to have, I think, various sources getting information from. One of the main places, for better or worse, where I try to get my information from is the website that's formerly known as Twitter, now called X. So you get a lot of different opinions out there, and it's fairly unregulated. But there are others. There's Reddit. There's Truth Social. There's there's another one, Blue Sky, I think, or Sky
Sure.
Blue. Okay.
Yeah, Blue Sky, I think, yeah.
Yeah, so there's all sorts of places to get your information from. I tend to like those places better than like CNN or just the evening news or Fox or anything like that. But anyway, the opinions on something, and I'm going to stick right now with Twitter just because that's where I'm getting most of my source from. They really range from knowledge work is dead, and anyone in the knowledge work industry should be looking for another job within 2 years. Like, it's gone because these things are so fascinatingly good. To the other side of the coin is, this is the biggest nothing burger ever. And so you guys are that are into this are just buying in on the hype. And you're all going to feel like fools in a couple of years when it comes out that this just doesn't work, and it's just um, a lot of sloppy stuff that looks right and sounds right, but actually isn't very good data at all. So, and then of course people saying, well, it's going to be somewhere in between. And my thought is, yeah, it's going to be somewhere in between because those are two extremes. I'm not sure that there is anything left outside of those extremes. So the key is, where is this going to fall, within those two very wide goalposts? Um, but it's interesting, the takes that are out there and some things that you're seeing. So I think without a doubt, it looks like that there's a potential that this has some power to do things like summarize data and put consolidated, what would be very complex data together in ways that folks can understand it. I don't know that it's inventing anything more than what's on the internet right now that you couldn't find with Google. So this information has been out there, and you could type into Google and do any search you want. What AI seems to be pretty good at is a translator that can speak to you as a human who's doing their Google searches and then explaining back to you what they're finding. So one of the ways to look at it is, I think you can look at AI, these engines, as somewhat of a translator into human speak, all the data that's on the internet, and trying to summarize it for you. And in which case, that's fairly powerful. Whereas before, you did a Google search and you got a lot of different sites and you could read a lot of different things and say, what does this all mean? AI kind of does that summary for you. So I think that's where some of its power comes from. Now, how businesses are using it yet, I think there's a wide range. Some businesses, for sure, especially let's say the tech businesses, are looking at this as, this is going to do the labor that otherwise humans would have done. And maybe the humans are still going to work here and they're going to review what's going on that AI produces. But it's going to change the very nature of some of our tech jobs, that it's going to be an AI function first and a human review second. So I think that's happening within the tech industry right now. Other businesses, I think, are just more slower to adopt it and figure out, where can this even be used in my business? Can it be used in HR to help out? Can it be used in my accounting department? Can I use it as a first line before I call my attorney on something? Can I type into this and get an answer maybe that approximates what I'd expect an attorney to say? Not replacing all those services, but maybe giving the business owner or the user of it more knowledge going into a conversation about what to expect in any given case.
So, Eric, it sounds like if you're talking about trying to create some guidelines around how and when to use it, that's really all about developing an AI policy so your employees kind of know how they can use it and when they should use it.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a wild west right now at some employers that don't have any AI policy at all. One of the things that you might want to get your arms around as a business owner is, are my people using AI and what are they putting out there? Because putting something into AI, say the company financial statement, hey, do all my ratios with respect to my bank statements. So you might have bank covenants and you scan those in, and then you scan your financials in and say, hey, do I meet my ratios and what does this mean, and do the testing. When you do something like that in a lot of these versions, in small print, it basically says anything you feed into this AI engine can be used for its learning model. So you potentially have now put your own private information out on the internet that you might otherwise think was private. Well, I'm just putting it into AI. In the back room, it's getting built into its learning models. And so now that information potentially is out there. So there are different levels of these AI models that you can purchase. One of the ones we're looking at is called an enterprise version of ChatGPT. By no means a commercial for them, but what the enterprise version allows you to do is potentially put in more private data because it has security fences around it. So we're looking at those. You'd want to make sure, though, that anything you're doing and putting out in the AI world, know that there are potential security issues with it if you're just putting data in these free engines out there. And so you don't necessarily want your employees doing that either. Now, at the same time, you could say, well, I'm just going to turn off our internet access to AI websites. There's programs that'll do that for you. Just you can't go to this, you can't go to that. You might already have those on there for other various websites. So you can do it for AI websites as well, where you just turn off their access to AI websites, um, which is fine, except what you might be losing out on is what if these people could use AI to do their jobs better? And
Right.
so at some point, to have a responsible answer to that question, you've got to get your arms around what's available and where you'd like people to spend their time and what they could put something in AI and what they shouldn't put in AI. That's the development of your AI policy. So step one might be, hey, I think this might be useful for the business, but we need a policy around this so that we make sure we are containing the data we need to contain, but at the same time, then being able to take advantage of what this might have to offer.
Well, and then Eric, the flip side. So obviously having the policy and people understanding how to protect data and when and how they can use it, but also, like you said, if you turn off some of those systems, you're not gaining any of the benefits of the efficiencies that AI can give you. So that's where the training comes in.
Yeah, that's right. And so I think the next step after you have a policy and say, okay, where can this be useful is you'd like to get some understanding of how to use these engines efficiently, whether it be, ChatGPT and Copilot, which is what our firm is looking into and has licenses for. How do you best use these? And so you maybe want to engage in some training that says, okay, tell us how to use these, tell us how to write the prompts, tell us how to write our own models that can look at a certain focused set of data instead of all over the internet. We maybe just want to look at a certain focused set of data to get answers for us. Tell us how to make sure that when we write prompts, we're doing so that we can get cited data so that the AI engine, if it puts something together, has reference points and citations behind it that we can quickly link to. So effectively, what you're trying to do is these are tools, but they're not simple tools like a hammer where you just beat something. They're very complex and nuanced tools. So, how do I best use these tools to accomplish what I want to accomplish? That's where the training comes in.
Yeah. And I know, we've talked about this a lot. You've been seeing that a lot of small mid-sized companies are relying on AI more and more and more.
I've seen that. What I see is what I'll say is it's the business owners typically that are venturing out into the AI world and asking questions right into AI that they might run past us, or they might say, "This is what I've got from when I asked ChatGPT, or I've asked Grok this, and here's my answer." Or they might run it by their attorney. The first thing we tell them is, "Don't forget, anything you put out there, these are not privileged and confidential conversations. This is open to the public on what you're putting there, and it might be used in their learning model." And then also, um, these AI systems, as you use them, are running into what they call hallucinations, which really means they are making stuff up when they put it together. The best I know on the highest of high levels or the lowest of low levels, whatever you want to call it, is how these engines work. Is they're not people and they're not personalities. It's all math functions. It's math functions that draw together and try to predict what the next grouping of words and sentences will be. And so it's really using math to try to figure out what is most likely to come after a certain set of words, what's most likely to come next. Oftentimes that produces actually pretty good information. But on occasion, and it's not a rare occasion, on occasion, it will produce things that go off on a tangent, and then its math starts taking it down this tangent of um, complete error. AI doesn't know when it's wrong. And so when it tells an answer, it generally tells an answer just as confidently when it's right as when it's wrong. So you have to know when it's wrong. Otherwise, if you rely on it, you could be just as wrong and look just as foolish.
So here's the question, Eric. Let's go back in the time machine to the early 90s. It's the end of a 80-hour work week. Eric's cracked open his second or his third beer. There might have been some hallucinations there too, right? Maybe.
I got my third Meisterbrow going by then.
Um, no, it's all. It's all really good stuff. I think that, one of the things we continue to hear is like there are the two sides of the coin. Some people are using it too much and relying on it too much. Some people are using it too little. Either they don't trust it, they feel like they're not doing their job if they don't do it. But that's where the training comes in. Make sure that your employees know how to use it, how they should be using it, and help them be more effective and efficient at their jobs. That's clearly important.
Yeah.
So, last question for you, then, Eric, and this is throwing you a curveball. We've talked a lot on the podcast about the R&D tax credit.
Yes.
So we've talked about how it's not just a bunch of chemists in white coats developing new molecules, but if I
That's
am,
what they do. Yes.
that's what they do. If I am putting things into ChatGPT or some system like that and creating some new process, is that research and development?
I think the Chat GPT could be a tool within research and development if you are exploring scientific data to accomplish a certain business problem. And so I think ChatGPT will end up being a tool. Just using it is probably not R&D, or how do I use it as R&D? But if you're using it to a certain end to overcome a business issue, whether it's process or whether it's how to make something, or how to design, I think using it actually will probably be a helper within the R&D world. But just learning how to use it is probably not R&D. That's
Yeah,
where I'd come down right now.
it's interesting, and I'm sure there will be many opinions, and I'm sure rules set around that as well, because that does start to blur the line a little bit, doesn't it?
Well, let me ask ChatGPT. I'll tell you.
Exactly.
That's
I
it.
know what it's going to say. Take all the tax credits you want.
Right.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for this week's episode of the Biz Beat by SVA, our AI special version. If you found today's conversation helpful, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, on YouTube, or on Spotify. Share it with another business owner. And my typical caveat is that we're here to talk about things that are general in nature. Don't use this advice for specific information to yourself. But what I will say is that in addition to SVA certified public accountants, we also have SVA Consulting, which does a lot of AI policy generation, training, and a lot of helping companies through those first steps of AI. So if you do have questions about that, please reach out to us and we can connect you to the right people here at SVA. Thanks again for listening, everybody, and we will see you next week on the Biz Beat by SVA.
It's the Biz Beat by SVA, breaking down the news of the day. From tax tips to business trends, smart insights from trusted friends. The Biz Beat by SVA.